Join me tomorrow night on Twitch at 9 p.m. Eastern, where we'll play NFL Trivia for a chance to win cash prizes. Link to join below. And now, on with our feature presentation. As a head coach, when you're preparing for a big game, and in particular, an absolutely critical bowl game, think of everything that you're telling your players. You're trying to keep them in game shape, especially since the long layoff between the last regular season game and the bowl game of over a month can be somewhat difficult if you don't know how to prepare for it. You're trying to keep them all healthy and get and keep them focused, because it can be tough to mentally prepare yourself over the course of an entire month for one opponent. But most importantly, you're telling them not to do anything stupid. You're telling them not to do anything that could injure themselves in a foolish way. There's a reason you're not seeing coaches encourage their players to jump on trampolines, or go drag racing, or ride jet skis at full speed, or anything like that. There is nothing good that can come out of doing that. Well, this is Colorado head coach Rick Neuheisel, and he was crazy, or dumb enough depending on how you want to look at it, to actually encourage his players to do just that. Prior to the 1996 Cotton Bowl, Neuheisel had an absolutely bizarre strategy during one practice that seems like there's not a chance in the world that it could happen today. And it's even shocking to think that this happened a quarter century ago, because that's not that long ago in the grand scheme of things. And amazingly enough, this strategy actually somewhat worked. No one knows how it worked without backfiring in catastrophic and disastrous fashion, but it did. Rick Neuheisel's game plan to get his team ready for the Cotton Bowl was so crazy that it has to be examined, because even though it worked out here, this seems like a classic case of do not try this at home and do not try and repeat this. And this is the story behind the craziest practice in the history of the Colorado football program. Before I talk about the actual practice in question, we need some context to understand how good Colorado was, why they were playing in the Cotton Bowl in the first place, and how practice was going where Neuheisel tried this insane strategy. Prior to the start of the 1995 season, Colorado needed a new head coach after the legendary Bill McCartney resigned. As a side note, to learn more about McCartney's great career with the Buffaloes, and in particular, one notable incident he had during the 1980s, click the card in the upper right corner. And they turned to none other than Rick Neuheisel, the team's offensive coordinator in 1994, promoting him to the head position. Now this was a giant gamble that a lot of people did not agree with. He was never a head coach at any level of football before. He was only 34 years old, making him the second youngest coach in Division I, only ahead of Louisville head coach Ron Cooper, who was younger by just 4 days, and was so young that the first time that middle linebacker Matt Russell saw him, he thought he was a recruit, and not, his actual head coach. However, the gamble seemed to pay off in a big way at first, because in 1995, Colorado was picking up right where they left off, and had one of their most successful seasons in program history. In the 11 regular season games that the team played, they went 9-2. Not only did they take care of business when they had to, defeating every unranked opponent on their schedule by a minimum of 2 possessions, but they proved their worth against ranked competition, going 4-2 against teams inside the AP top 25. They beat 3 ranked teams on the road, and won all those games by multiple possessions, defeating Wisconsin on the road by a final score of 43-7, defeating Oklahoma on the road by a final score of 38-17, and defeating Kansas State on the road by a final score of 27-17. While they did not win the Big 8 Conference thanks to a dominant year by Nebraska in what was the conference's final season before the Big 12 formed, they finished in second place, and for their efforts, were able to earn a spot in the Cotton Bowl, where they'd be playing Oregon down in Dallas. Colorado was a great team throughout the season. As once September hit, they did not spend a single week outside of the top 10, even being as high as number 4 at one point in October. They had a dominant offense. Even when Coy Detmer got injured, quarterback John Hessler came in and performed exceptionally well, throwing 20 touchdown passes and leading the Big 8 in passing yards while finishing second in passing touchdowns. When your starting quarterback gets hurt and your backup comes in and arguably performs better, to the point where your head coach is saying that your quarterback depth chart is 1A and 1B, that's amazing. Usually, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. But this was the rare exception to the rule, where Colorado legitimately had 2 quarterbacks. The Buffaloes finished the season averaging an astonishingly high 37 points per game, which was the 6th highest total in all of college football, only behind Kansas State, Florida, Nevada, Florida State, and Nebraska, who somehow averaged 53.2 points per game. Let's just say there's a reason they're regarded as one of the greatest college teams of all time. And the Buffaloes had a fairly strong defense as well, allowing 20 points per game, which ranked inside the top 30 in college football, and only trailed Kansas State and Nebraska in the Big 8. On average, they were beating their opponents by an average of 17 points per game, and that was impressive considering how great their conference was, as 4 of the top 9 teams in the final AP poll came out of the Big 8. Neuheisel had already set the program record for most wins by a head coach in his first season with the team. Now, all that stood between him and the Cotton Bowl, which would have been the first Cotton Bowl win in school history, was a game against Oregon. And part of the reason why Neuheisel was so successful was because he resonated with his players. He knew how to relate to them. Yes, he knew his stuff and was hard on his players when he had to be, but he knew how to have fun and let his student athletes be college kids. As Neuheisel said, "I don't believe in the old adage that you have to rule with an iron fist." And middle linebacker Matt Russell echoed those thoughts, as he said he was having a ton of fun playing under him. Russell said, "We've done so many fun things. We got the Mike Tyson fight during two-a-days. We had popcorn and candy and sat in our team meeting rooms and watched the fight and had a ball. We go inner tubing. You never know when you go to practice what the schedule is going to be. A lot of times, you'll expect a full go, full pads practice, and it will be shorts." And let's just say that no one knew what the practice schedule was going to be prior to the Cotton Bowl, because Neuheisel had a bold and, quite frankly, stupid strategy to get his team ready to play in this game. And this idea for a practice shocked everyone. Neuheisel was watching his team practice every day for the Cotton Bowl, and he wasn't liking what he was seeing. It wasn't that his guys were looking sloppy, or weren't taking the game seriously, or weren't focused. Instead, it was quite the contrary. He thought that the team was a bit too serious, and needed to loosen up. Remember that Neuheisel had a somewhat unconventional approach compared to a ton of other coaches, as he coached with the belief that football should be fun, and if you're not having fun, then what's the point? So Neuheisel decided that he was going to call an audible to throw his players off and give them a break from preparing. With that, one day, when the players arrived at practice, they were told to not get dressed and go on the field. Instead, they were told to go on buses outside the facility, because they were about to be in for a surprise bonding activity. Now obviously, I have no problem with the coach having his team skip a practice so they can do something non-football related. Nor should anyone. It's what Neuheisel did all year, and it's a great success. And we've seen tons of teams do this at the professional and the college level. Maybe they won't do it before a bowl game, but we'll see teams spend days at the beach, or at the bowling alley, or at a paintball facility just to let off some steam and have some fun. So what do you think Neuheisel did here? Keep in mind that the number one objective during practice is to not get anyone hurt. Maybe they went to the movies. Maybe they saw the hot new movie Toy Story that was out. They did not do that. Maybe they went to a local arcade. They did not do that. Maybe they did some indoor mini golfing, or went to a laser tag facility, or did something along those lines. Nope, they did not do that. Because do you want to know what Rick Neuheisel had his players do? Do you want to know where Neuheisel took his players? He took them skiing. No, I am not making that up. Neuheisel decided that it was a genuinely good idea to have his players go skiing. I think everyone's got the same thought in the back of their mind after hearing that. Skiing? Skiing? What could possibly go wrong? You were going to have a bunch of football players skiing. Some of these players probably had never skied in their lives. Granted, it was Colorado that we were talking about, so some players definitely had experience. But still, you want players riding on skis and spending all day going down giant mountains and knowing that one fall, which is highly likely that they'll take at least one tumble and hit the snow, since these are not professional skiers that we're dealing with here, can seriously injure them? One pizza when you should have french fried, or one french fry when you should have pizza'd, and it's a torn ACL. Naturally, the medical staff was highly opposed to Neuheisel's borderline insane idea. The trainers went on the trip and accompanied the players, and the trainers were basically begging the players to not do anything. Don't listen to your coach. As linebacker Matt Russell said, the trainer was whispering to guys, "Hey, just take one run and call it a day." They did not do that. Neuheisel wanted his players to have fun, and wanted his players to take as many runs on the slopes as they could, and wanted his players to enjoy themselves, even if it meant the insanely high probability that someone could get hurt. There are literally provisions in professional contracts that prohibit players from going skiing because of the injury risk that it poses. You could potentially lose your scholarship if you suffer a non-football injury by doing something that coaches wouldn't allow you to do in your free time, like going skiing. Can you imagine if, a week before Alabama was set to play in a playoff game, a player came up to Nick Saban and asked if he could make a skiing trip? I don't even want to know what Saban's reaction would have been to that. And yet, here was Neuheisel actively encouraging his players to ski. And Neuheisel had no regrets whatsoever, even if he acknowledged that this idea was borderline insane. As he said on this surprise practice trip, I would say that was bordering on the out there. But it was a great trip, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Amazingly enough, no one got hurt, which seems like a Christmas miracle if I've ever seen one, that you took an entire team of football players skiing, many of whom were not skiers, and not a single one of them suffered an injury. But this trip, more than anything else, showcased just how strange and unconventional Neuheisel's coaching philosophy was. Find me another coach in America, at any level, that would even think about doing what Neuheisel did. You couldn't. But not only did this strategy work in terms of no one getting hurt, but it worked in terms of loosening up his players for the big game. Because when it came time to play the Cotton Bowl, the Colorado Buffaloes saved their best performance for last, and absolutely smoked Oregon. In front of a national television audience on CBS on New Year's Day, and in absolutely horrible weather conditions, Colorado destroyed Oregon by a final score of 38-6. The defense, which was great all season, played by far their best game in this bowl, as they forced 5 turnovers, including a pick 6 by freshman quarterback Marcus Washington. The defense also held Oregon to an abysmal 2 for 15 conversion rate on third down, coming out to just 13%. When your opponent is only converting on third down 13% of the time, you're usually going to win. The special teams unit, which was probably the only shaky part of Colorado throughout the 1995 season, was great and executed a fake punt in the fourth quarter. After trailing 6-0 at the end of the first quarter, Colorado scored 38 unanswered, taking command of the game and averaging more than 1.5 yards more per play than Oregon did, thanks to a great game by running back Herschel Troutman, who won the offensive MVP by running for 100 yards and a touchdown on over 7.7 yards per carry. It was a great way for Colorado to end what was nothing short of a fantastic season, and the AP voters rewarded them with a 5th place finish in the final AP poll, only behind Florida State, Tennessee, Florida, and unanimous national champion Nebraska. The number 5 ranking was the 4th time in the last 7 years that the Buffaloes finished inside the top 5, and marked the highest end-of-the-season ranking by any first-year coach in Colorado history. And to think that one of the contributing factors in why Colorado played well was a ski trip that many would say was ill-advised. Now, to any head coaches watching this video, in no way whatsoever am I advocating that you take your team skiing. Your mileage may vary, because even though it worked out for Colorado and Coach Neuheisel, I cannot promise you that it will work out for you, and may result in someone getting hurt that you really don't want getting hurt. But if there was any moment that truly showcased the bizarre nature of Coach Neuheisel, it was this moment right here. Some might say that this decision was insane. Heck, 25 years later, some might still say that this decision was insane. But as many superstitious people say, it's only weird if it doesn't work. Get your official Jaguar Gear 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, and subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out Twitch every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL Trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping get the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. So you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.